They found a frozen canine German Shepherd near two puppies. What the rescuers did next will give you chills. In the middle of a brutal winter storm sweeping across rural Montana, a rescue team stumbled upon a sight they would never forget. There, lying motionless near the edge of a snow-covered ravine, was a canine German Shepherd, barely breathing. His fur was stiff with ice, his body trembling from hypothermia, and beside him, two tiny, helpless puppies curled against his chest, desperately clinging to the last bit of warmth he had left to offer. The rescuers knew they were in a race against time. But what they did next would not only save 3 lives, it would leave everyone involved forever changed. This is a story of sacrifice, instinct, and a bond that defies the coldest of nights. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our emotional and inspiring animal rescue stories that show just how powerful love and loyalty can be, even when the odds seem impossible. The wind howled across the open Montana fields like a living thing, sharp and relentless. For most people, it was a night to stay indoors, safe by the fire. But for Rescue Unit 12, it was another emergency call in a week already full of them. Jackson Miller, a 38-year-old veteran rescue coordinator, tightened his scarf and adjusted his headlamp. He and his partner, Emily Torres, a 29-year-old wildlife medic, trudged through knee-deep snow following a faint distress signal picked up by a nearby highway patrol unit. The coordinates led them to an old service road, barely visible under layers of snow. The deeper they went, the more Jackson's gut tightened. He had seen enough winter rescues to know that time was their greatest enemy. "Over here!" Emily's voice cracked through the cold air. She was several yards ahead, pointing toward a dark shape at the base of a shallow ravine. Jackson scrambled down the embankment, boots slipping on icy rocks, until he stood over the scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. There, lying half buried in snow, was a large German Shepherd. The dog's black and tan coat was rigid with frost, ice crystals clinging to his whiskers, ears, and paws. His body trembled violently, his breathing shallow and erratic. But it wasn't just him. 2 tiny puppies, no more than a few weeks old, were nestled tightly against his chest, shielded from the worst of the cold by his own body. The puppies whimpered softly, their frail voices barely audible over the wind. One of them didn't seem to be moving at all. Jackson's heart sank. "Dear God, how long have they been out here?" he whispered. Emily dropped to her knees beside the dog, immediately checking for signs of life. She placed 2 fingers against the shepherd's neck, feeling for a pulse. It was faint, but it was there. "This is a canine. Look at the badge on his collar," Emily said, pulling aside a layer of frozen fur to reveal the metal tag. The engraving was simple but unmistakable. Canine Rex, Unit 47, Missoula PD. Jackson's stomach flipped. Canine officers weren't like regular dogs. They were trained heroes, partners in life and death situations. The thought of Rex ending up here, alone and near death, was almost too much to process. Without wasting another second, Emily reached for her emergency thermal blanket. She wrapped it tightly around Rex's body, then gently bundled the 2 puppies into her jacket for warmth. "Stay with me, boy." "Stay with me?" she whispered, stroking his frozen ears. Jackson grabbed the radio clipped to his belt. "Base, this is Unit 12. We've located the canine and 2 puppies. All are in critical condition. We need immediate evac support at coordinates 62.9. Priority 1. The response crackled through static. "Copy that, Unit 12. Chopper en route. ETA 15 minutes. Hang tight." But Jackson knew 15 minutes could mean life or death in these temperatures. Emily pulled out a small heating pad from her medical kit and activated it, slipping it under Rex's torso. "His temperature's dangerously low, but he's fighting." Jackson crouched beside her, unzipping his own jacket and leaning in to share body heat. Together, they sat there in the snow, shielding the shepherd and his pups from the biting wind, willing them to survive. As the minutes dragged on, Rex opened his eyes just a sliver. The dull brown of his gaze locked onto Emily's face, as if understanding that help had finally arrived. Emily choked back tears. "You did good, boy. You kept them alive. Now it's our turn to save you." The distant rumble of rotor blades filled the air as the rescue helicopter broke through the storm clouds. Jackson lifted his head, signaling with a flare as the chopper began its descent. Emily held Rex's head gently between her hands. "Hang on. We're not losing you tonight." The scene closed on that desperate, freezing mountainside. A woman, a man, and 3 lives hanging by a thread, with the storm still raging overhead. But little did they know, this rescue was only the beginning of a story that would touch hearts across the nation. The rescue helicopter hovered above the clearing, its rotor blades slicing through the frigid night air. Snow kicked up in violent spirals as the crew lowered the stretcher basket. Jackson and Emily worked quickly, placing the barely conscious K9 German Shepherd into the insulated rescue cradle. The puppies, still trembling and barely responsive, were carefully swaddled in heated emergency blankets and cradled close to Emily's chest as she climbed aboard. Inside the helicopter, the cabin was dim but warmer than the freezing outdoors. The flight medic, Steve Harper, immediately hooked Rex to a portable oxygen unit. The German Shepherd's breathing was shallow and labored, but the faint rise and fall of his chest was enough to give everyone hope. Steve examined the puppies next, checking for signs of frostbite and hypothermia. "They're cold, dangerously cold. We need to get them to the animal hospital, fast." The pilot pushed the helicopter to its limits as the city lights of Missoula began to appear on the horizon. Below them, the snowy wilderness faded into distant darkness. During the flight, Emily never took her eyes off Rex. Her gloved hands gently stroked his stiff, icy fur. "Hang in there, big guy," she murmured, voice thick with emotion. "You didn't survive all that just to give up now." By the time they landed at the Missoula Veterinary Emergency Center, the medical team was already waiting at the helipad. Gurneys were rushed forward. The puppies were whisked into the critical care unit, and Rex was taken directly to intensive care. Dr. Allison Reed, a 42-year-old trauma specialist known for handling police canines, took charge. Her face, partially covered by a surgical mask, showed visible concern as she examined Rex's unresponsive body. Severe hypothermia, body temp dangerously low, heart rate irregular, she said, barking orders to her team. Heated IV fluids were started immediately, and warming blankets were wrapped tightly around him. The staff worked quickly, inserting a catheter and preparing for possible cardiac complications. Meanwhile, the puppies were placed inside an incubator. Their tiny bodies struggled to regulate their temperatures, but after several minutes, one of them started moving its paws weakly. Emily stood by the observation window, hands pressed against the glass, holding her breath with every tiny movement the pups made. Jackson, still wearing his snow-soaked jacket, walked into the waiting area with 2 steaming cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily. "They're fighters, just like their dad," he said quietly. Emily nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She knew that without Rex's body heat and protection, those puppies wouldn't have survived the night. About an hour later, Dr. Reed approached them with an update. Her eyes were tired but hopeful. "Rex is still critical, but his heart rhythm is stabilizing. We're slowly raising his body temperature. The next 6 hours are going to be crucial." "And the puppies?" Emily asked quickly. "They're responding better than expected. One is still weak, but both are showing signs of improvement." Emily let out a long breath. She hadn't realized she'd been holding. For the first time that night, a flicker of hope pushed back the exhaustion. Suddenly, Jackson's radio crackled, It was Officer Grant Turner from the Missoula Police Department. "Jackson, is it true? Is it really Rex? We've been searching for him for 3 days. The whole unit's devastated." Jackson grabbed the radio. "Yeah, it's him. Barely hanging on, but he's here. He's fighting." There was a long pause on the other end before Officer Turner's voice returned, thick with emotion. "Tell him we're all praying for him, that he's not alone." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. The weight of what Rex had endured suddenly hit her all at once. The freezing temperatures, the isolation, the overwhelming instinct to protect those puppies even as his own body shut down. Dr. Reed turned to them again. "If he makes it through the night, he'll have a chance. But it's going to take everything he's got." Emily stepped into the ICU, walking to Rex's side. She placed her hand gently over his paw, whispering softly, "You're not just a hero on the job. You're a hero out here too." The heart monitor beside him beeped steadily, each sound a small promise that Rex wasn't giving up. Not yet. As the snow continued to fall outside the hospital walls, everyone in that small emergency room held their breath, waiting, hoping, praying for a miracle. The gray light of dawn crept over the Missoula skyline, casting a pale glow on the snow-covered streets outside the veterinary hospital. Inside the ICU, the air was thick with tension and quiet determination. Rex's breathing remained shallow, his body still struggling against the damage done by hours of exposure. His fur was still damp from the warming treatments, and an oxygen mask covered his muzzle. Electrodes monitored every heartbeat, while heated IV fluids continued to flow through his veins. Emily hadn't left his side all night. Sitting on a metal stool next to his bed, she kept one hand on his paw, her fingers tracing slow, steady circles into his fur as if willing him to hold on. Jackson stepped quietly into the room, carrying a blanket and a fresh cup of coffee. He placed the blanket over Emily's shoulders before sitting beside her. "No change yet?" he asked softly. Emily shook her head, blinking back the exhaustion in her eyes. "He's holding on, but it's like he's fighting from somewhere far away, like he's trapped between giving up and coming back to us." Jackson stared at Rex for a long moment. "Canines like him, they don't go down easy." As the morning wore on, other members of the Missoula Police Department began arriving at the hospital. Officer Grant Turner, Rex's original handler, walked in with red-rimmed eyes and a heavy heart. Seeing Rex in that fragile state nearly broke him. The last time Grant had seen his partner, they'd been in pursuit of a suspect along a riverside trail. An unexpected landslide had separated them. Despite hours of searching, Rex had disappeared into the wilderness. "I should have found him sooner," Grant whispered, kneeling beside the bed. "I let you down, buddy." Emily placed a reassuring hand on Grant's shoulder. "You didn't let him down. He survived because of you, because of the training, the loyalty you built together. And he protected those puppies out there. That's what saved them." Grant's gaze drifted to the observation window where the puppies rested in their incubator. One of them, the stronger of the two, had started to open its eyes, revealing cloudy blue irises. Its tiny body wobbled with each breath, but there was life, hope, in every shaky movement. "I didn't even know he was with puppies," Grant murmured. "No one did," Emily said. "We still don't know where they came from, or why Rex wouldn't leave them behind." The hours passed slowly. Every beep of the heart monitor felt like a lifeline, each one pulling Rex further from the edge. Dr. Reed returned frequently, checking vitals and adjusting medications. "His temperature's coming up. He's responding better to the oxygen now," she announced around noon. "If this continues, he might regain consciousness soon." Emily smiled faintly at the news, but she stayed cautiously guarded. She knew how fragile recovery could be for a dog in this state. Then, just after 2 o'clock, something miraculous happened. Rex's paw twitched. It was small, barely noticeable, but Emily caught it instantly. She leaned forward, speaking gently but firmly near his ear. "Rex, it's Emily. You're safe now. You're warm. You're home." Grant stood up, rushing to the other side of the bed. "Come on, partner. You've got this." Another twitch, this time stronger. Then a faint, raspy whimper escaped from Rex's throat. Emily's heart soared. "That's it. Come back to us." Slowly, painfully, Rex opened his eyes. They were glassy and unfocused at first, but as seconds passed, recognition flickered across them. He looked at Emily, then at Grant, and then toward the glass window where the puppies rested. A collective breath was released across the room as the realization hit. Rex wasn't done fighting, not by a long shot. Grant wiped at his eyes, laughing through the tears. "There's my boy. There he is." Dr. Reed rushed in, quickly checking his vitals and nodding in satisfaction. "We're not out of the woods yet, but this is a very good sign." Emily squeezed Rex's paw gently. "You've got an entire team here pulling for you, buddy, and 2 little ones who still need you." Rex's gaze lingered on the incubator for a moment longer, as though drawing strength from the sight of the puppies he had fought so hard to protect. For the first time in days, hope filled the room, but none of them could have guessed. The hardest part of Rex's journey was still to come. The following morning, the mood in the hospital had shifted. There was hope now, but it was a fragile kind of hope, like a thin layer of ice over deep water. Rex's body was stabilizing, but he remained weak. His movements were slow and his breathing shallow. The hypothermia had taken its toll, and the veterinary team worried about potential internal damage, including to his heart and kidneys. Emily sat beside him, her tablet open as she updated his charts. She glanced at the IV line, ensuring the warm fluids continued flowing into his system. Nearby, the heart monitor beeped steadily, a sound she had come to treasure. Grant stood by the window, looking down at the puppies in the incubator. The stronger one was already trying to stand, wobbling on its tiny legs. The smaller one, however, was still struggling. "Do we have any idea where the puppies came from?" Grant asked, breaking the silence. Emily shook her head. "No collars, no microchips. They're not from the police unit, that's for sure. My guess, Rex found them out there, abandoned, and chose to protect them." Grant's gaze dropped, his jaw tightening. That sounds like him, always the protector. Just then, Dr. Reed entered the room, her expression serious. "I need to speak with both of you." Emily and Grant exchanged nervous glances before following her to the consultation room. Dr. Reed didn't waste time. Rex's blood work came back. His kidney function is impaired, and we're seeing signs of early organ stress from the prolonged hypothermia. If we don't intervene aggressively now, we could lose him. Emily's heart dropped. "What's the next step?" "We're going to start dialysis to help his kidneys flush out toxins. It's risky in a dog his size and condition, but it's his best shot. And there's something else. He's going to need a blood transfusion. Soon." Grant straightened. "Then let's do it. Whatever it takes." Dr. Reed nodded, but hesitated for a second. "We don't have a compatible donor on site. We've reached out to other clinics, but finding a match for a German Shepherd his size, it's not easy on such short notice." Emily suddenly stood. "There's a retired K9 at the shelter, Max. He's a German Shepherd, healthy, and weighs close to Rex's size. I worked with him during his last checkup. Let me call them." Within the hour, Max arrived at the hospital. Though older, Max was strong and calm, the kind of dog who seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. As the veterinary staff prepared the transfusion, Emily stayed close, whispering encouragement to both dogs. "Come on, Rex. You're not done yet. You've got a whole city rooting for you." The transfusion began, and for what felt like hours, The room fell into tense silence. Every staff member, every officer in the waiting area, even strangers in the hospital lobby, everyone waited. Meanwhile, in the neonatal section of the clinic, the smaller puppy began to stir for the first time. Its tiny paw stretched out weakly, and its little chest rose and fell with more strength than before. Emily checked on the pups, tears filling her eyes as she watched both of them cling to life. "You're just like your protector, aren't you?" she whispered. Back in ICU, as the transfusion neared its end, Rex's heart monitor showed a small but noticeable change. His blood pressure began to rise, slowly at first, then with more consistency. Dr. Reed smiled faintly, allowing herself the smallest breath of relief. "We're turning a corner," she announced softly. Grant exhaled, sinking into a chair with his hands covering his face, a mix of exhaustion and gratitude pouring out of him. Emily leaned closer to Rex, her voice trembling but steady. "You did it. You're fighting your way back." But just as hope filled the room, a nurse rushed in, her face pale. "Dr. Reed, you need to see this. There's something unusual about Rex's chest X-ray, something we didn't notice before." Dr. Reed's expression darkened. She grabbed the file and left the room, her eyes scanning the images with growing concern. Emily and Grant followed close behind, their hearts sinking once more. Just when Rex seemed to be improving, a new and unexpected threat had emerged. Dr. Reed stared at the X-ray, her eyes narrowing as she studied the shadowy mass near Rex's lungs. The room around her felt suddenly colder, the hum of the medical machines now blending with the heavy beat of worry in her chest. Emily hovered close, her heart racing. "What is it? What's wrong?" Dr. Reed took a steadying breath. "There's fluid building up around his lungs, more than we'd expect from hypothermia alone. And this shadow here," she pointed to a darkened area near Rex's ribcage. "We need to confirm it with an ultrasound, but it could be internal bleeding, possibly from blunt force trauma." Grant's face paled. "You mean someone hurt him?" "It's possible," Dr. Reed said cautiously. "Or he could have fallen while trying to protect those puppies. Either way, we need to drain the fluid and monitor for bleeding immediately. If we wait, his lungs could collapse." Without wasting a second, the team moved back into the ICU. They prepped Rex for a thoracentesis, a procedure to remove the fluid from around his lungs. Emily held Rex's paw tight, whispering soothing words, while Dr. Reed guided a needle carefully into his chest cavity. Thick, bloody fluid began to fill the syringe. The sight of it turned Emily's stomach, but she didn't let go. "Easy, Rex. Stay with us," she murmured, tears threatening to spill. The procedure lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. As the last of the fluid was drained, Rex's breathing eased, his chest rising and falling with less strain. "He's stable, for now," Dr. Reed said, removing her gloves. "But if there's active bleeding inside, we'll need to perform surgery, and he's still too weak for that." Emily sat down heavily in the nearest chair, her body sagging with exhaustion. "We can't lose him now. Not after everything." Grant nodded, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "We won't. Whatever it takes. We'll keep him fighting." Just then, a nurse stepped into the room, holding a clipboard. "We ran a scan on the puppies too. Thought you should see this." Emily flipped through the report. Her eyes widened. "Oh my God. Grant, look at this." The nurse pointed out the findings. Both puppies have low body weights and signs of malnutrition. They've likely been without their mother for at least a week, maybe more. If Rex hadn't found them, they wouldn't have made it. Grant's voice dropped to a whisper. So even when he was lost, he still chose to protect them. The weight of that realization settled over everyone in the room. Despite his own suffering, Rex had prioritized the lives of those two helpless pups. Over the next few hours, Rex's condition remained touch and go. The staff kept him under constant observation. Emily and Grant took turns sitting at his side, refusing to leave him alone for even a moment. Word about Rex's bravery started spreading beyond the hospital. Local news stations picked up the story, and soon, messages of support began pouring in from people across the state. Officers, rescue volunteers, and dog lovers who were touched by the loyalty and courage of one canine German Shepherd. Emily scrolled through her phone, reading some of the messages aloud to Rex, even though he remained unconscious. "You've got people praying for you from all over Montana, even from out of state." As night began to fall again, Emily placed her head gently on the edge of Rex's bed, too tired to stay upright any longer. Suddenly, she felt something. A faint movement. She lifted her head quickly and looked at Rex. His eyes had opened. Not just a flicker this time, but odd enough for her to see the familiar, determined light behind them. His gaze shifted, slowly, first to Emily, then to Grant, and finally to the window where the puppies slept. And then, as if gathering every ounce of strength he had left, Rex moved his front paw toward Emily's hand, resting it there with unmistakable intent. Grant gasped. "That's not just survival. That's him coming back." But just as hope flooded the room again, Dr. Reed returned with lab results. Her face was serious. "We need to talk. Rex's internal bleeding isn't stopping. If we don't get him into surgery within the next hour, we may lose him." The air went still. Everyone knew the next decision would decide Rex's fate. Inside the emergency operating room, the atmosphere was tense and charged with emotion. Dr. Reed stood at the center, fully gowned and gloved, giving sharp instructions to the surgical team. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking every beat of Rex's fragile heart, every breath pulled through the oxygen mask secured over his muzzle. Emily stood at the observation window, her hands trembling as she held a cup of untouched coffee. Grant paced behind her, restless and visibly torn between anger and fear. "This wasn't how this was supposed to end," Grant muttered, running a hand through his hair. "He survived the cold, saved those puppies, fought through hypothermia. This can't be it." Emily turned toward him, her voice low but steady. "It won't be. He's stronger than we think. We have to believe that." Down in the ICU, the two puppies were still fighting their own battle for survival. The larger one had managed to take small steps, wobbling inside the incubator. The smaller pup remained frail but was breathing on its own now. For the first time, both were showing signs of recovery. Back in the OR, Dr. Reed carefully guided the surgical team as they worked to locate the source of Rex's internal bleeding. The cause quickly became clear: a ruptured blood vessel near the lung, likely damaged either during his fall in the ravine or from prolonged strain while shielding the puppies. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly as the surgery stretched past the hour mark. Every time Rex's heart rate dipped, the team held their breath, but Dr. Reed's steady hands never faltered. "Clamp. Now. Suction. Okay, we're stabilizing," she said. Sweat dripped from her brow, but she didn't dare pause. Meanwhile, in the waiting area, officers from the Missoula PD had gathered. Some stood in uniform, others still in civilian clothes, all of them waiting, praying, hoping for good news. It was nearly 3 hours later when Dr. Reed finally stepped out of the operating room, her surgical mask pulled down, revealing a tired but relieved smile. "He made it," she said, her voice hoarse but full of pride. "We repaired the damage. He's stable. The next 48 hours are still critical, but he's got a fighting chance now." The room erupted with quiet cheers, hugs, and sighs of relief. Grant dropped into a chair, covering his face with both hands, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. Emily rushed to Rex's side as soon as they moved him back into the ICU. His body was still weak, tubes and monitors surrounding him, but his heart was beating strong and steady. She leaned down, her lips near his ear. "You did it, boy. You fought your way back. Again." Grant stood beside her, his voice breaking as he spoke. "You saved them, Rex, and now you've saved yourself." Later that evening, as the hospital quieted down, Emily sat by the window, holding one of the puppies close to her chest, while the other rested inside the incubator. The puppy's survival felt like a small miracle in itself, but seeing Rex breathing peacefully was the victory everyone had been praying for. The story of Rex's rescue had already started circulating online. Social media posts showed pictures of Rex and the puppies, along with hashtags like #HeroK9, Mama Rex Strong, and #NeverGiveUp trending across local platforms. Donations began pouring in to cover Rex's medical expenses. Messages from strangers filled the hospital inbox, people offering to adopt the puppies, thanking the rescue team, and sending their love to a dog that most had never met but now felt deeply connected to. Dr. Reed visited the ICU again, checking Rex's vitals one more time before heading home for a brief rest. "He's not out of the woods yet," she reminded Emily and Grant. "But tonight, he's winning." As the night deepened, Emily rested her head on the bed of Rex's bed, finally letting herself drift into sleep. Grant sat in the corner, watching over them all. And as snow continued to fall softly outside the hospital windows, Rex slept, his chest rising and falling, steady and strong. Unbeknownst to everyone, the next chapter of Rex's life was about to begin, a chapter that would bring healing, new beginnings, and a home for more than just himself. But for now, all that mattered was that he had survived. 2 weeks later, the air inside the Missoula Veterinary Hospital was lighter, filled with laughter, hope, and the quiet energy that comes with recovery. Rex lay on a large orthopedic dog bed near the main window, soaking up the rare winter sunshine that broke through the clouds. His fur had regained some of its natural shine, and though he still moved slowly, the determination in his eyes was unmistakable. Emily knelt beside him, scratching gently behind his ears. "You're a legend around here now, you know that?" she said with a soft smile. Rex's tail thumped lightly against the floor in response. Grant entered the room carrying 2 small bowls of special puppy formula. The 2 puppies, now named Aspen and Scout, tumbled over each other at his feet, eager for their afternoon feeding. Aspen, the stronger of the 2, was already growing fast, full of energy and mischief. Scout, still smaller but determined, followed close behind, refusing to be left out. "They're making progress too," Grant said, kneeling down and placing the bowls on the floor. Both puppies attacked the food with gusto, their tiny tails wagging furiously. As Emily watched them eat, her heart filled with pride and something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. In the days following Rex's surgery, the outpouring of support from the community had been overwhelming. Donations covered every penny of his medical bills, and more than a dozen local families had applied to adopt the puppies once they were old enough. But there was one decision no one had expected. Grant stood, brushing puppy kibble off his uniform pants. "I've been thinking about it, and I talked to the chief this morning." Emily looked up, curious. "About what?" Grant crossed the room and sat beside Rex, resting a hand gently on his partner's back. "I'm retiring him. Officially." Emily blinked in surprise. "What? Are you sure?" Grant nodded, emotion tightening his voice. "He's done enough. More than enough. After what he went through out there, after what he did for those puppies, he deserves the kind of life where he never has to face danger again." Emily smiled, her throat tightening with emotion. "So, what's next for him?" Grant hesitated for a second, then grinned. "He's coming home with me. Permanently. No more patrol cars. No more late-night calls. just long walks, warm blankets, and a big backyard. Rex lifted his head slightly at the sound of Grant's voice, as if understanding that his days of service had finally come to an end. "And the puppies?" Emily asked. Grant chuckled, glancing down at the two little furballs now curled up against each other, fast asleep. "Well, the chief's daughter already called dibs on one, and the other? Let's just say I've been thinking. Rex might like the company." Emily laughed, wiping at her eyes. "I think that's the best idea I've heard all year." A week later, with Rex strong enough to walk on his own again, the hospital organized a small goodbye ceremony. Officers from the department, hospital staff, and local reporters gathered outside as Rex took his first determined steps out of the hospital doors, flanked by Grant and Emily. Cheers erupted as he wagged his tail, greeting familiar faces and accepting gentle pats on the head. The story of the frozen canine who refused to give up had reached far beyond Missoula by then. Newspapers, television segments, even online blogs had covered his incredible fight for survival. Grant loaded Rex carefully into his truck, the two puppies secured in a cozy crate nearby. Before leaving, Emily leaned into the driver's window. "Promise me you'll bring him back for checkups," she said with a smile, fighting tears. "Every time," Grant promised. "And maybe next time you come visit us, bring our treats." As the truck pulled away, Rex turned his head, giving one last look at the people who had saved him. His eyes, once dulled by cold and pain, now sparkled with life and gratitude. Emily stood watching until the vehicle disappeared down the snowy road, her heart full. As she turned to head back inside, she paused for just a moment, taking a deep breath of the cold, clean air. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of loyalty. And remember, even in the darkest moments, courage can light the way.